war goddess, feeding on death and nourishing mother. The Morrigan stands as a paradigm of the puzzling character of Celtic goddesses, as they often encompass contradictory traits and divergent symbolism. Learn more about the Morrigan and her possible connection to Morgan Le Fay, also known as Morgana, by staying with me until the end. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Angela Puca and welcome to my Symposium. I'm a PhD and a university lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism and all things occult. Today's video is brought to you by the kind supporter of the Symposium, Angry Abacus. Thank you so much for commissioning this video, and I hope you're going to find it helpful in aiding your own creative endeavor. As a quick premise, I'd like to highlight that I will be using the category Celtic in this episode, because it's the one reported in the sources that I use for this video. However, I'm aware that this categorization has been recently challenged by scholars and pagans, as it lumps together cultures that present these similarities that should not be obliterated. Now let's move on to the topic, shall we? The Morrigan was the war goddess of the Pagan Irish. In Gulermovich Epstein's words, she is a terrific goddess, personifying war the way the ancient Irish saw it. Loud, chaotic, glorious, bloody and heroic. She is savage and deceitful, bloodthirsty and reveling in the gore of the battle. She comes as a carrion crow or a hag, foreshadowing or causing violent death. However, she's not a demoness. She's a feisty warrior who fights for her race, the Tuatha De Danann, the folk of the goddess Danu. Her contradictory traits are exemplified in her strange relationship with Ireland's great warrior Cú Chulainn. She, in fact, fights him, yet forces him to rise to his greatest glory. Under other names, she manifests other aspects, such as motherhood, sorcery, prophecy, and teaching. The three main theories on the etymology of her name suggest that Morrigan could mean Great Queen, Phantom Queen, and Sea Queen. The interpretation of Mor as sea comes from reading the term without the mark of Lent, and hence as a form of an old Irish word that means sea, water. Interestingly, the latter interpretation has been leveraged to link her to Morgan Le Fay of the Arthurian cycle, also known as Morgaine or Morgana. We'll say more about the possible connections between the two later, but for now I shall mention that this etymological link is rather tenuous. Morrigan is also an early Irish gloss for Lamia, in the Vulgate of Isaiah 34:14 in the Hebrew Bible. The Lamia was known from antiquity as a child-devouring female monster who may reside in graveyards among the corpses. The revised standard version of the Bible reads here Night Hag, while the King James Version Screech Owl. Early Irish scholars must have thought of a Lamia as a creature similar to the Morrigan, who often appears in a bird shape. By combining the different associations emerged from the different translations of this passage, we get the sense that they saw the Morrigan as an ominous creature, female and presenting herself in a frightening bird form, as well as being associated with desolation and death. An analysis of Irish medieval literature, conducted as part of a referenced doctoral research, and including linguistic, onomastic, and narrative evidence, shows that the many names associated with the Morrigan all refer to a single class of entities performing a coherent function. Interestingly, the tendency of depicting goddesses with contradictory traits and symbols does not appear to be merely an insular development, as several studies showed that it goes back to the roots of Celtic religious thought. However, it is significant to highlight that these dichotomous interpretations of characters and actions as being either good or evil may stem from a Christian understanding of ethical values, as well as what even classifies as good or evil. Celtic mythic figures were both positive and negative, and it's been suggested that the tendency to split up such opposites is one of the main mythological developments of the Christian period. It may indeed be an area where Christian scribes interpreted and, in a way, altered the pre-Christian material. The Morrigan, as we mentioned, appears under many different names, takes many forms, and performs numerous roles, including carrion crow, sorceress, warrior, prophetess, source of immortal glory in battle, shapeless terror and confusion during war. You know, she is a mother, but her children are poisonous, or deadly warriors, or her fatal childbirth leads to a deadly curse. Her relationship with the greatest warrior of the Ulster cycle, Cú Chulainn, is quite erratic. She prompts him to battle, yet opposes him. She offers him her body, then attacks him in many ways when he refuses. As Macha, she makes his death inevitable. Yet as Morrigan, she tries to block him from going alone to his last battle. In the end, she mourns him, yet revels in his gore. Wow. Thus, even when she opposes him and dooms him, she provides him with the opportunity to win his greatest glory. Glory which he himself has chosen over a long life. Sounds sensible, I guess. Now let's explore the alleged parallelism between the goddess Morrigan and the mythical character of Morgana, Morgan Le Fay of the Arthurian cycle. Hebert suggests that both the Morrigan and Morgan manifest the trait of being shapeshifters. In Thomas Malory's famous The Death of Arthur, published in 1485, Morgan physically transforms herself and her following into stone to evade Arthur's rage, while in Geoffrey of Monmouth's Vita Merlini, she shapeshifts into a bird. These incidents led to an earlier association with the Morrigan, who can also turn herself into a black bird, as well as alter her appearance from ugly to beautiful. In Herbert's interpretation, Morgan's ability to change shape signifies her potential to evade and to resist the shapes that others, authors, critics, and characters attempt to impose upon her, so to use the expectations of others against them, and to move among, outside, and around assumptions as necessary. Since Celtic thought features the ability to embrace seemingly contradictory aspects rather than viewing them as oppositional, Celtic goddesses are multifaceted by nature. However, the Morrigan specifically has long been seen as having a strong influence on the subsequent characterization of Morgan, both for the speculations surrounding a linked etymology as well as the traits of their characters. For instance, there are similarities between how the Morrigan interacts with Cú Chulainn and how Morgan treats Arthur and his knights. That said, Celtic sources are not the only precedent to consider. Roman goddesses such as Sulis also exhibit these contradictory characteristics, as she presides over healing springs while also being associated with disease. So in this sense, it's difficult to see whether all of these goddesses who present these very contradictory aspects in the pre-Christian world may all foreshadow Morgan and the traits that have been associated to her in the Arthurian cycle. Is it really the case that Morrigan is the leading influence? Or is the Morrigan representative of traits of the wider Celtic culture and the pre-Christian conceptualization of goddesses? Yet, as Hebert explains, in the early 20th century, Lucy Allen Peyton and Roger Sherman Loomis wrote extensively on the possible connection between the Celtic Morrigan and Morgan Le Fay. Yet this gave rise to several critics, maintaining that the link between these figures is too weak, and there is no etymological support for such claims. Their evidence relies on similarities between the late medieval tales in which Morgan appears and the Celtic sources that feature Morgan-like characters such as the Morrigan. The apparent resonances between Morgan and the Morrigan still remain a tantalizing possibility that awaits a strong support in scholarship. Some of the contradictions between the two figures may derive from creative revisions on the part of the authors, while the association between Morgan and the Morrigan, based on the volatile, contradictory nature of them both, may overlook that Morrigan was not the only Celtic goddess to embody the features that we find in Morgan Le Fay. And it might also be the case that such influence stems from the wider Celtic mythological milieu. Nonetheless, Morgan's descent from a Celtic goddess may provide an interesting, albeit partial, explanation and reconciliation of her contradictory portrayals in later literature. Lastly, as Hebert highlights, a link to goddess figures may counter the impulse to dismiss this female shapeshifter as simply evil, an instinct seemingly aroused, at least in part, from her very changeability. As a final note, I'd like to address the practitioners among my viewers. I'd just like to clarify that historical and etymological connections, or lack thereof, between entities don't necessarily invalidate your religious beliefs or spiritual practice, unless being historically accurate in your religiosity is a valuable aspect of your belief system. I'd see no issue in acknowledging a difference between historical evidence and individual religious experience. In fact, you are an active part of the contemporary development and reinterpretation of these entities, which means that anthropologists and historians will have to deal with how pagans and other magic practitioners conceptualize and engage with the Morrigan and the Morgan now in just a few years' time. My take is that knowledge is always empowering, whatever you choose to do with it. This is it for today's video. Thank you again, Angry Abacus, for reaching out and commissioning a video on this topic. And as for you, my kind viewer, if you like my content and want me to keep the academic fun going, please consider supporting my work with a one-off PayPal donation by joining memberships or my inner Symposium on Patreon, where you will get access to our Discord server, monthly lectures, and lots of other perks depending on your chosen tier. And if you did like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, share the video with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and activate the notification bell, because I know that you really don't want to miss any upload from me, right? Thank you so much for being here, and stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now.
Children.